Ulrike, it's now 5:30 in the UK, 6:30 at you, 7:30 in Finland, and we're on Insta Live. And my name's Anita at Zabludowicz Collection. And today I am interviewing the great feminist artist, Ulrike Rosenbach. Hi, Ulrike, how are you?
Hi, Anita. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Via Instagram.
Yeah. We are on Instagram, exactly. Yeah. And we just had a little chit chat and we were just trying to hold back because there were so many great subjects to talk about. And we were talking even about pottery making, and even that's part of your practice as well. And you have been involved in many, many mediums. You've worked with so many mediums in your life.
Yeah. Well, I was a traditional trained sculptor in the first years where I was studying at Düsseldorf Kunstakademie, you know.
Yes, and you studied under boys, is that right?
Yeah, after the fourth or second year, I was studying with Joseph Beuys and learned to use material in a different way. You know?
We'll come back.
That was his special training. You know? To learn how to work with steel or clay in a very unusual way.
And a very, very loose as well. It wasn't formalized.
Right, and as it was, you know, it was the time of objects, Claes Oldenburg and so on, and that brought us students to the idea of not doing traditional sculpture anymore, but really trying to get different types of objects also with a different concept, like a concept which is connected to everyday life.
And also those concepts, you talk about Oldenburg, were you looking at the United States, or do you think the United States was looking at Europe at that time? We're talking, by the way, back in the 60s.
Yes, we are talking back.
You don't look that old.
That's when I studied.
But if you don't mind me saying when you were born, because you really don't look it, you were born in 1943.
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I studied in the 60s, that's right. And that was exactly the time of pop art and in particular in sculpture about the objects of Claes Oldenburg and all the other ones. Well, I think we looked at the American development of avant-garde sculpturing, and but also in Europe we had a different tradition, you know. In sculpture, it was a time of building up bigger modern buildings with steel sculptures in front, and so I also studied with Norbert Kricke for a few semesters.
Wow! And growing up in Germany after the big war, how did it feel for you? What was your feelings? What I know that you studied Buddhism and spirituality. Was that a reaction to everything that went on the previous decades? You were the next generation, the ones that wanted to build the country.
I guess yes, but this didn't have to do with spiritual developments. They came much later. At the time of the 60s and 70s, I was really into politics of the students' movement in Europe, which was rather more political than it was in the United States, for instance. Mm-hmm. We very little heard about England or Britain at that time, I must say, although I had friends there. Mm-hmm. But we were alien to the political development. There was no Europe, you know, it was totally divided still, and the borders were tense and closed sometimes to everyone, to people like us, as we had no money to go.
Well, when you were at college, were you already thinking about the woman and their issues, and was that part of your politics?
Yes, that was very early, was part of my own artistic work. Already in '69, I founded the first women group, still at the Academy of Arts in Düsseldorf, and we were only 5 women to come there. And but fortunately, there was a lady who was a guest student from the United States, Judy Chicago's class, and she she taught a little bit about what the idea of Judy Chicago's feminist art movement was.
All right.
That was very early, yeah.
So Judy Chicago was quite an influence on you.
Oh yeah, not on me, but on in the United States at the West Coast, she was very influential. Was very much more connected to the video scene and avant-garde video scene in New York, which also led to the acquaintance of Lucy Lippard, who just was writing a book which was called The Center, and that was about women's new aesthetics. And there were lots of people like Yoko Ono, Hannah Wilke, and so on this book. And also we had a address desk, a feminist address desk, which was founded by Lucy, and that was how the connection was with the East Coast. That was very vivid for me.
So what was the feminist address desk? Can you explain exactly what it was?
Yeah, she had invited international women artists to join into the address desk and put together catalogs, book comments for her book, and also for a show with photography and video, the new medias at that time, to be shown in the United States, which was very unusual and almost impossible to do, as at that time women artists were not invited to show into group shows very much. Like there were one or two in group shows, but no more. And she was really trying to change that.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I just want to mention Pavel Peace just joined us, and he says the audience loves seeing the reflections on the birth of Venus at the Walker last year.
That's such an old work, actually.
Yeah,
I did it in LA when I was teaching at the Arts Institute in '74. Yeah.
Which we will definitely get to very shortly. When did you start being interested in the video? How did that happen? How did it come across? How did you come across it?
Well, actually, it's interesting. You mentioned the working with the objects before instead of traditional sculpture, because I was trying to do those hoods and other objects for my body. And as these objects were just only for me important in the process of wearing, I did the first films, and I was very disappointed with the way how male artists and other colleagues tried to shoot me wearing my objects. And so I got my own video equipment, where I could control myself.
Bravo, Mama.
Do you? Yeah.
Good for you.
That's how it happened.
And that was back in the late 60s, which is an amazing, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things that you did in the late 60s, which relates to me and the collections. You were, okay.
I was in collections.
Yes, what relates to me and your work, our collection, is the work that you created with influenced by Andy Warhol. Art is a criminal action, which was for me one of the most profound artworks as a woman, I have ever seen in my life. It's a killer work in the art world, and I think I mean it's so important to me, and I don't want to digress or go into it in detail, but I have it hanging in our living room because above our fireplace, it is that important. And it gives me pleasure, and it makes me feel powerful every time I see it. And it's so now, and it's about us women. And thank you for doing that work. And I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit about it. Was it fun to do? And a little bit of a story about that.
That's really sweet of you to ask that. Well, it was so different than it would be today. We still had uh, a work of video and photography was analog. Everything was analog. There was no digital
Yes, of course.
photo or video. So it was a real collage. I had to glue it with a book print, which I took out of the book. And then I had a friend who was a very well-known photographer, and he did this this Elvis imitation with me, you know. And so it was not easy to do because I have different proportions in my body. And so we had to really look how to put it together. And then I collaged it. I glue it to a piece of paper, and then did analog reproduction of it.
For those who don't know exactly what it is, it's Ulrike. She's in a pose in the same position that Elvis is, that was produced by Andy Warhol in the early 60s. I mean, it was so avant-garde of you, and it was such an amazing moment for you to do this. And what made you think of doing it? Why did you do it?
Oh, first of all, I don't know. I really liked Andy Warhol's work. And I also liked the position that Elvis had, because it wasn't really aggressive, you know, to me. It's a very kind way of holding this position of trying to focus somebody to shoot down. And that was absolutely contradictory to what it really meant in your mind, you know, to put on this position to somebody. It was a more reflective way of having this position. And that's why I like to do it, I believe. Yeah, who knows? It was very popular, this Andy Warhol picture, you know.
Oh, right.
At that time, it was really, really popular. And we had this robbed, it was a silk screen, as you know. It was a silk screen work. And there were a lot of duplications and robbed imitations of the original Warhol piece at that time in Germany and in Europe. Very amazing.
Fantastic. And did you ever get the chance to meet Warhol?
No, I hadn't.
Oh no, you never met him, but you gradually got yourself away from Germany, and you managed to get to California. How did that happen? How did that come around? And you were in Cal Arts.
Yeah, that was years after. It was in the 70s and early 70s. I was in New York a lot, I must say, also because of doing a performance or connecting the video artists like Vito Acconci or Dennis Oppenheim at that time, Bill Weckman, and so on. And we had a lot of cooperative discussions and talks about our work. Nobody earned money with their work, you know. It was a total underground scene. And that was Andy Warhol's also, but I never made it to the factory, I must say. I didn't dare. I was too shy.
Oh, no. Well, you did very well as an individual anyway, so it was all good. And that was your one takeoff from Andy Warhol, and the rest of your work is beyond individual. And you were one of the first artists to use video, which is amazing. And one of the bases of our collection is video art and digital art. Yes. And so we relate to your sense of feeling for technology. It's amazing. And So when you got to Cal Arts, you were there for how long? Were you there for?
I was there for only a year, and I was hired to teach electronic arts, so photo, video work, media work, and feminist art. This combination, which is my particular special way of working with. As a concept.
Well, these lucky students who were interacting with you. Did you work with any artists who or any of the teachers or any of your pupils? Are they well known today, or did they continue?
Oh, sure. Kel Arts was very well known at that time already. It was also Ella Capro just had left the classes and went to San Diego, and he was teaching happening, as you know. And John Baldessari was there, and he hired me for his class, for his master class, to teach more about media arts. And the feminist part of the teaching job was actually was because of Judy Chicago's past at the school, you know. She wasn't there anymore, but it was sort of dedicated to her work at the school at that time.
Wow.
And she had still an art desk for women left, and John was sort of continuing that. And so I continued with that also.
Amazing, the two great heroes. I was wondering if you'd like to show us a little bit of your art, if that would be okay. If you would like walk us around a little bit and show us a few pieces, if that's possible.
Well, I have got one. I don't know if this camera is doing it in this very sunny room.
Give it a go. Here we are. Here we go. Thank you.
So here we have, just not in focus, but coming up soon. This is a part of a very old black and white. It's a black and white photo montage from 75. This is called Supergirl, and it's a cartoon, a drawing with one of my own photographs, you know, about myself. So it's a montage over developing the two figures. And if I go on here, Priska. Oh yeah, this is a black and white photography from a performance, which is called Meeting with Eve and Adam. And in the background, you see an old Renaissance or parts of an old Renaissance sculpture about Eve and Adam in front of the tree. Yeah, you know, there is the tree coming up with a snake which has a female face. And that's me in front of this whole projection. It's a slide projection, you know, doing the performance. And that was at the Art Institute in Boston, which was very.
Oh, right.
That was a real. Do you understand me?
100%. Did you go a lot to America? Were you visiting there a lot and performing a lot there?
I did a few tours, yes, and showed. I did this performance tour, you know, in the 70s.
Hang on, we lost you, but you'll be coming back. Don't worry. Hang on there. You'll be coming back in a minute. You've just frozen on us, but.
No, okay.
Now you're back. You're back.
Yeah,
I think.
Oh, wrong. Okay.
Okay. Don't worry. There you are. Hi. I see you. Okay, we're good. We're good.
Here we
we're
go.
Back. Yeah. Okay.
Here we go again, and this is my drawing desk. I do my drawings and collages here. This is a little excerpt from a drawing which I had just cut out to use it further on for another collage which I tried to set up here. Let's see. So that's the table I'm working with in everyday work.
That's lovely. Really, really lovely. I'm going to ask you in a minute about what happened. I'll keep going.
So okay. It's really difficult with this camera because it doesn't do it very much, you know.
Don't worry, it's doing fine. I mean,
Yeah,
Insta is a very low tech,
it's a
so it's
very
not the best.
sensible camera.
It has its goods and its good and its bad things, Insta Live, and it's sometimes quite low tech in the. But it works. It's something that we can see the now, and you're here now rather than later, and for anyone that wants to get back to you, they can see you 24 hours later as well, and they can see you beyond. So it's all good. So I just want to ask you about when you came back to Cologne. You continued to teach, and you also founded the school for feminist creativity. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What exactly was it, and why did you come back, and why did you do that?
Why did I come back? That's a very good question. You know? My daughter keeps still asking me, why did we come back? It had to do with our financial situation. That's not so easy for somebody abroad artist in the United States, you know. And here I came back to Cologne, and we started all over, you know, like having nothing anymore, but we started all over. And this the group which I founded, I sat on the structure of the women's feminist workshop in LA, which had this structure, which was sort of invented by the movement of artists, female artists in Southern California. And one of those artists was Lucy Lippard's Contradiction, Judy Chicago. And so that was a particular structure which I took and tried to give it to the German women which wanted to come. And actually we were always about 15. It was a fluid group, but we were in a meeting in my studio, and we were working together on theories of how women were coping with the situation as an artist, or had coped with through the centuries, past centuries. And I was showing women's work in the last centuries, like Artemisia Gentileschi or Kaufmann, you know, and like all these European women, and also English ones, which I had learned to be working further on with their own personality.
And at the time when you were working on these things, how was this accepted in Germany?
Not at all. It was, you know, it was totally alien to the art scene, and I never could mention it. Like also in California, the feminist theoretics also began to study the witches movement, but in Germany we couldn't even mention it.
Oh my God! So there was no political or social impact on the work that you did then?
No. They had different, the German movement had different ideas about the feminist movement. It was more socialistic, you know, influenced by the condition of the DDR and Russia, the communism, and it was also more connected to the students' revolution, which also was socialistic. And in the United States, it was a lot more dedicated also to all kinds of cultures, studies of women at the universities.
Did you have a relationship with Carolee Schneemann and Barbara Hammer when you were there?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Sure, I did. Yes.
Yeah.
Carolee, I knew, and I just met her in Cologne before she died.
And, I just saw a talk with Klaus Biesenbach at PS1. Just before.
Yeah, she was a lovely woman. I liked her a lot.
So you had a lot of contact with all these women. You really were quite a network.
Yes, it was a network, and it was also holding up its idea of a network. You know, it was meant to be a network which was very important to all the women in culture and arts at the time, internationally wise.
Yeah, I read something about, I didn't quite understand it properly, but maybe you can tell me about ATV.
ATV. Oh, that wasn't much actually. All these things, you know, which are so important right now, were really
Yes.
small parts of my life. And ATV was meant to mean alternative television, which is very usual to be used now, but it
Yes.
was totally alien at that time, the first one to be called ATV. And it was done in my studio. It was a collaboration with two friends, Klaus von Borch and Marcel Odenbach, who were 10 years younger than I was. And we were all joining into this group and using my technique for our productions to be shown to the art scene, you know, which was not possible in a way that galleries would use it very much. We had very small access to the art scene, and that's why we did it to be more efficient, you know.
And do you think that ATV now, because I find I am a collector of digital art, but it's a very not a very populist medium, to say the least, but it's incredibly respected and intensely adored by the people who support it. And I was wondering if ATV now, the alternative television, would be at the time for it to happen now. Do you think it would be accepted much more now today?
Well, actually, the conditions are totally different, I believe.
Yes, of course.
Back in the 70s, we didn't have any private television broadcast, you know, just state broadcasting, and we have 3 television broadcastings, networks, you know, and there was no private allowed. It was forbidden. So the openings and let's say the broadcast we did was underground, and we weren't the only ones. You know, I mean, in Italy they did radio underground, or in Spain, and we were sort of also that also was a connected underground network at that time. Only in England you had Glasgow, Channel 14 or Channel 4, and in New York you had Channel 14, and that was already official. And in America, it was much easier. That's why we went to see it and see how they worked and produced at that time.
Oh, so you went to check it out and you researched it before you did this. Yeah. It's an amazing concept, and still today it still is. So it's got a long way to go. It is really. It's still for the taking.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about how small it was, you know, like not really acknowledged.
Yeah, and it's still now. I think there is great room for expansion on this particular subject, alternative TV. But I want to ask you something else. I read a little bit. The words to be looked at-ness. Is that you that wrote those words? Yes. Can you explain it?
The word to look at. Say it again, please.
To be looked at-ness.
Ness, how it is spelled?
N-E-S-S. Or was that you? Or maybe that was somebody else in one of the, must have been one of the actual, I think it must have been written about you rather than you writing about it. It was the way you were looking at work, and somebody described you as that.
I did do something, but I don't remember N-E-S-S, and I don't know what that is.
No. Oh, well, there you go. But now I want to ask you about today and where we are now, because do you see any alternatives to large exhibitions and cultural events with big audiences now? Do you see an alternative that can occur today in any way?
Well, I think what we now have is a totally different structure. We have this world of curating, curating exhibitions, curating ideas and concepts for exhibitions, and every artist, and female or male, needs to have a gallery or a curator to really publish their work. And that is a lot more offer than it used to be. So I'm, in a way, I'm very satisfied with the development worked out, you know. The alternative underground is not, in a way, not very necessary anymore. The alternative underground was was a way to do it in a scene which did not have any access to public viewing. Or public viewing isn't that word for public showing.
So now there is a large public audience ready to, and a very hungry audience, art audience.
Yeah.
And you say now it's very important for publishing in many ways, books and online, etc., etc. This is a very important way forward.
Yes.
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 And through this, do you see that there's a chance for a whole new social and cultural solidarity in this crisis? What do you think will be the best outcome? What do you think, especially for women at this time, what do you think is the best outcome?
Well, the best outcome is to really get together into networks again, you know, and do try to set up the new thing, because this is how you continue to put development into a total stop. A development and of a scene and an art is only to be taken in the way that you have public connections and public recognition, and that could be done with networks a lot better than with just individual scenes. But we have, for instance, everybody could do that today. We have the web and we have the digital development, and you don't have to publish an expensive book as it was in the analog times, you know. So it's so much easier, everything in that way, if you want to do that.
And have you embraced social media in your work at all, or you've kept to mainly analog and obviously digital recording?
Well, I do digital recording nowadays, and I have my galleries to show with, and I have a lot of group shows going on, which show my video works. But actually, it's quite amazing that the newer works is not shown right now, or not so often. You know, I would like to show it much. Like every artist, the newest is the best. You know, and that is difficult if you are older. Then things are changing in a different way. You know, I just go showing everything, like the young work and the old work, and that is for such a long period of 50 years. That is quite something, how to collect and how to separate it from other works. You know,
Ulrike, a 50-year career is remarkable. Remarkable that you've done this, and of course everyone wants to see your older works, especially at the time that they were overlooked, and now they are very apparent now, these works, and they're very meaningful and very contemporary. So this is very important.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm just going to turn on the commenting a little bit, because I know we had two questions. Pavel was asking, what's your opinion of the visual art world finally catching up with yourself and other artists like Joan Jonas? We spoke about Carolee Schneemann, who
Yes, I
came
know Joan. Yeah.
came from a performance background.
Yes. Joan Jonas, I know, of course, also. We showed at Documenta 6, we showed together, like in the same room area. And she is a very good artist. She has been training an art class in Stuttgart for a long, like 9 years, you know, before she went back to New York and to Boston to teach at the MIT. And I think she has a marvelous career as a sculptor.
Korea.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say this. One thing, you're very modest, and I know for a fact that so many artists have looked up to you in the past, and I'm looking forward to seeing your old work and your new work, being in many exhibitions, I don't doubt for 1 minute. And is there anything you'd like to finish by saying? I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I think we touched a lot of different topics, and that was very interesting for me to do, you know, that very rarely happens. And I'm glad you also touched the say, recent contemporary development, and I hope to be able to show it to you in Priska's space or in your own space. And
yes,
yeah, thank you very much. That was great. Yeah.
We look forward to seeing your new work, and thank you, Priska, and thank you, Ulrike, so much for your time. And I think the audience has really enjoyed it, and I look forward to meeting you in person in Cologne one day.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.